Supreme Court handed down a ruling yesterday on affirmative action, and university administrators across the country sat up and took notice. The decision has a direct impact on schools in Michigan, but it could have much wider influence on admissions policies and on diversity on college campuses. For the past decade, the University of Michigan has been ground zero in the debate over the use of race in college admissions. In 2003, the Supreme Court ruled against racial quotas used in the university's undergraduate admissions, but upheld the law school's more limited use of race among many factors in fostering academic diversity. That led Michigan voters to pass a state constitutional amendment banning racial preferences altogether. And yesterday, the Supreme Court upheld that ban in a 6-2 ruling. In his majority opinion, Justice Anthony Kennedy defended the rights of voters, writing, "This case is not about how the debate about racial preferences should be resolved. It is about who may resolve it. Now that it's permissible for voters to eliminate affirmative action, critics expect more states to do just that." So how are colleges and universities in Massachusetts interpreting yesterday's ruling? Frederick Lawrence is the president of Brandeis University and a civil rights scholar. He also happens to be a member of the WGBH Board of Trustees. Welcome to you.
And a proud member of the board at that.
Oh, that's good to hear. So you're a lawyer and a university president. Did the U.S. Supreme Court get this decision right?
I think the Supreme Court roughly got it right. I mean, they took one issue, I think, largely off the table. For those who've been looking for the court to say that affirmative action is unconstitutional, that it's a racial preference, that they can't be used by universities, there's not a majority for that, and there's really only appear to be 2 votes for that. Justice Kennedy's opinion for 3 justices, and then Justice Breyer and Justice Sotomayor and Justice Ginsburg in a separate dissent all agree in different ways that affirmative action is constitutional. As Justice Kennedy said, the real question now is who gets to decide. Should it be the courts, or should it be the legislature, or the people?
Or the voters, which is the problem. I want to put a graph up here because, as we said earlier, the University of Michigan has been at ground zero of this. And you look and see what happened since the Michigan voters put a ban on racial preferences in college admissions. There's been a fairly significant drop in black enrollment at the University of Michigan. Why is that when colleges and universities can still use preferences? They know who's who when people are applying. They can tell, and people often check it off in a box. Why would there be fewer when, I'll speak for you, I know colleges and universities all the country want some diversity among their student body.
They do, but for the big schools, now fortunately Brandeis we don't have this problem, but for the very big schools where a lot of the decision is just based on numbers, it's harder to do the kind of fine-tuning that we're able to do when we put an entire class together. When we put a class together, we're really looking at what are we trying to achieve in terms of diversity, in terms of geographic representation, in terms of backgrounds, in terms of all the interests that make the place the special place that it is.
So they're not doing that. You're saying they're just looking at the SAT scores and the grades, and they're not taking, even though they could take it into consideration.
I think they're not only going to look at those things, but they're largely going to look at those things. Look, I'm bringing in a class in the fall of about 820, 830 students. If instead of that I'm bringing in a class of 5,000 or 8,000, it's a very, very different kind of equation.
Okay, so let's take Brandeis as an example. It's a non-sectarian university.
Correct.
But the student body is, I think I have this right, about 55% Jewish.
Correct.
Do you take that into consideration? You must.
Well, we actually don't. I mean, that really is taken up in terms of who the applicants are and who accepts us. You know, don't forget this is an elaborate dance of who we look out for. In fact, right now, as you and I are talking, students are making their last decisions of who's going to come. So we find that's not really a factor that we pay much attention to. We do look at other factors in terms of making sure that the class is diverse in a whole variety of ways. And we also have particular projects and programs that play a role in this. You know, for years, going back to 1968, we have something called the Transition Year Program, which is drawn from students largely from the New England area, who come from the kinds of backgrounds where we know they have the firepower. But if you threw them right into college, it wouldn't work. We bring in 20 students like that every year. But
still, I mean, it's a private institution, so you're not really regulated by the government. You must look at that and say you want to maintain that tradition. It's recognized. I mean, I was hitting all these Google things. It's widely recognized as one of the predominant and most prestigious universities where Jewish people go, you must want to maintain that.
We do, but the way in which we want to maintain that is the program and the nature of the institution. So we attract students who are interested in that, some for religious reasons, some for cultural reasons, some for academic reasons and the kind of research they want to do. But of course, at the same time, we have undergraduates from about 70 different countries and from virtually every state.
Is part of this, though, like a class issue, too, that college and universities want people who have money. They want people who can contribute to the endowment. So is there some relief by this decision, so they think, well, we don't have to pick people who might not have the kind of finances we're looking for?
I don't think any of us look at it that way. I mean, obviously, one of the things we take into account is the finances of the university. But at ours, for example, about 1/3 of the entering class will be full-pay students. About 2/3 will be financial aid. I think most schools of our caliber are at roughly that kind of a category. So I don't think anybody would look at this decision as one that would let them off from anything that they really want to try to be able to achieve. I think what you're going to see now, probably not in Massachusetts, is a spirited debate in many states to get this kind of a proposal put in front of the electorate or through the state legislature. And in many ways, that may force a very healthy discussion.
I don't know if it'll ever happen in Massachusetts.
I would suspect not. I mean, right now, I think that what most of us are able to do is to be sensitive to a number of different backgrounds to put the kind of class together we want to put together.
I mean, one of the things that this is creating is a debate on a whole other level, because you look at what's happening in California, where they supposedly admissions are racially blind too, but they've now accepted huge portions of the Asian population.
Right.
And once again, it's based on scores and grades and that kind of thing. But the issue being, are we subdividing our classes again and pushing African Americans and Latinos to the bottom?
I mean, the way I would look at it is that part of educating our students is preparing them for an incredibly diverse world and an incredibly global world. The fact that I've got students from so many different countries, I view as a benefit to those students coming from abroad, but also for my American students to be part of that discussion. So as we reach out and try to make sure that class is diverse, it's part of the education of our students.
Well, one of the issues that people are saying, well, wait a minute. I mean, if they're not getting in, maybe they're not at the same intellectual level, and that's an issue that's coming up.
But when you just measure things by the numbers, you get something, but you miss a lot. I mean, for example, we're part of something called the Posse Foundation, which you may have heard of, which recruits students in a variety of different cities who come as a group. 10 students in our liberal arts posse, 10 in our science posse, which we actually started at Brandeis. These are kids who've got high school grades and high school board scores that would not necessarily suggest what we can otherwise find out, which is that they will succeed. And bring them in, having tested them for leadership skills and a variety of other abilities. So if you just look at the numbers, you miss a lot.
But if you look at the numbers now at University of Michigan, in other words, they're taking fewer of those people.
I think, as I said before, the bigger schools are going to have a bigger problem with this, fortunately, than we are.
All right. Frederick Lawrence, thanks so much for coming out and talking about that.
Pleasure. Nice being with you.